Rock and roll. And we're off. So, this is session 2 for the electronic illustration course, and wanted to come in and bring everyone up to speed on how things are going. So, the assignment, the plan here is that you're going to be taking an old sketch and then redoing it, and turning it into a digital illustration masterpiece. So, where I began with my project, I had uploaded like 300 old sketches. I was going through all my old sketchbooks to Facebook. And so I had a big library, and I found this sketch as well as this sketch that I thought were pretty interesting. They stood out to me, and I really liked the tree, but the tree was kind of boring on its own. There wasn't much of a story going on there. And then I saw this character that I think is really cool. I did this, God, I don't want to do the math, a long time ago. And I thought this was an interesting design. I still haven't seen anything like this out there. So I wanted to give this character more of a life than just living in this sketchbook, and to bring him back out. So I wanted to combine those two images together. That led me to this first initial sketch. So in red, you can see that I dropped in my two pictures within Photoshop. I turned down the opacity on both of those images. I started doing a very, very rough sketch of both of them combined to get my ideas together. And then I went shopping for reference images for what the concept was going to be. So I thought it'd be interesting to take this character here and make them knitting themselves a glowing cocoon. I had no idea how I was going to do this. I've never painted a glowing knitted cocoon before in my entire life. But I like the idea of creating kind of an electric force type thing for this project. So from there, it was a matter of finding my reference images to help guide me along the way. So I went on ArtStation, and this was the background reference image that I found. Likely this was created within Midjourney. You can kind of see the acidic kind of plasticky cellophane stuff that's going down within this image. And some of the stuff doesn't quite make sense in it, but the color scheme is still something I would never consider creating or come up with out of my own head. And I thought it was pretty fascinating. So I wanted to use something like this and see how I could apply it. Also, the puddles, the glowing puddles, really appealed to me as well. And it the other cool thing about this is that it has atmospheric perspective, even though it's a glowing forest. That means that we've got a bright light coming from back here. It doesn't always have to have a bright light, but this tree is considerably lighter gray and closer to the background color than the tree is that's moving forward. So the tree over to the left, a little bit darker, and they're putting it sort of in the same plane. And then as we move to the foreground within an atmospheric perspective, the shadows become darker, the contrast and the saturation becomes higher, and that's what's giving us this cool bit of depth within this illustration. So image shopping, always important. It helps with the colors, helps with the shadows, can help you if you're not good at rendering trees, to be able to give you some ideas that you might not have thought of before. If a client hands you a contract and says, hey, we want you to render a carrot. Everyone in the world knows what a carrot looks like. You could probably draw a carrot pretty reasonably, but it's still going to help you to look online at 100 different carrots and how our other artists have drawn carrots. And you're probably going to come up with an idea that was better than the first one that pops up into your head. This is the importance of looking at illustrated references to help enhance your idea. The next thing that I went out and found was, what was this quilted cocoon, glowing cocoon, going to look like? And this, at first I was going to do one that's sort of made out of like doilies. You know what a doily is? It's like something like an old school, something that they knit in sort of a circular pattern. And I didn't want to do like a patchwork quilt. I wanted it to be knitted. So yeah, this seemed reasonable without creating too much visual noise on the screen. Now, let's go back to those drawings. There will be painting and there will be a demo tonight. What I want to do for you guys this evening is paint this character. And the goal here is that we've already got the blocking on this character. We'll see that in just a second. But I want to do the base shadow pass, the highlight pass, and then kind of talk to you guys about thinking through painting shadows as if objects are actually a 3D form. Oftentimes I see students when they go in and do shadow work, shadow work's important. Um, they grab the fuzzy brush and then everything just kind of gets this like underside shadow for some reason. And that's not really what we want to do here. One of the cool things about my method for painting, it's my method. I like it. I think it's cool, is that I always start with the background as far away as I possibly can within my scene. Whatever is the furthest thing you can see, probably going to be the sky. I want to try and get that in there first. And while I'm doing the background and blocking that in and creating a base tone, it helps me make a lot of decisions and helps me get comfortable within the painting space. It's the old adage that, if you start drawing someone's face and the first thing that you draw is their eye, then you're going to put so much detail, so much time, and so much effort into that eyeball. By the time you get to the cheeks and the lips and the hair, your hand and your brain is going to be completely worn out. And that we really want to try to develop these paintings with passes. So I start from the very back and then I start to work my way forward. So after I did the background, I went through and I started painting in the foreground. And again, I'm working from this reference image. And you can see that this is starting to come together in a big way. If you remember the reference image just a couple minutes ago, it had the glowing puddles. Trust me, the trees have got the rim lighting. That's what this is called here. These red lines around the outside of trees called rim lighting. And all of a sudden, my composition is really starting to work. It was important for me to try and get some of the blues and greens from the upper background into the lower left-hand side so that those colors are existing throughout the entire painting. I really like these little specks of white that are still in here. And I'm thinking about adding like some moss or something as I go back and start working on my polish pass. Mind you, this looks cool, but a finished painting, it is not. So when we're working with digital, we are working, like if I printed this, this would be poster size. This would be like movie poster size. And when you print it out that large, these brush strokes are really, really going to start to show up. So you can see as we get closer here, this brushwork is not that polished, it's not that refined. So if I was doing work for a client, I would go in and do a pass where I clean up and slow down on the polish pass and clean up all these extra little brush strokes that are going on. So sometimes you'll hear me say, hey, this painting does not look very polished. And it means that we've got too much of that brushwork that's still there. It looks rough, it looks unfinished and unrefined. And by cleaning up some of those marks, I'll do that with you this evening, it'll help your paintings feel more completed. Now, from there, I've got my blocking stage. So we talked about the color blocking. The color blocking, this is what I'm looking for from you guys, is just going in and laying in a flat color within your composition. This usually is going to be your middle tone. This means that the next step after you lay in the block color is to do the shadow pass on a new layer within Adobe Photoshop. So you create a new layer on top of it, you start painting the shadows. From this middle tone, this is a weird one because I'm doing something that's glowing. And I know that I'm going to go darker, and then I'm going to go much, much brighter here later on. But these two also represent the middle tones on this character. Not the green lines. I'm going to paint in all that. It's going to have line work, but this stuff's going to go away later on. Anywho, so let me show you where I ended with this painting. Right now, the next step that I'm about to show you took me like 3 hours to do. I will never paint a glowing quilt again in my entire life. This is a one-off. I never, no thank you. But I think it turned out pretty cool. And so 3 hours on the glowing quilt, this background, and to get to this stage that you see right here, probably 2.5 hours. If you're just starting off with digital art, I would, give yourself 6 hours, 7 hours to be able to get to this stage. If you're really, really slow and tentative, but I'm just giving you a time clock speed for myself to let you know that this stuff can get done. I've done a lot of landscape painting, so I'm pretty fast at that. Anyway, here's how things are looking now with this thing. And I'm going to jump back and forth between the previous one and the glowing one just so that you can see some of the differences that have taken place here. Of course, we got the big glowy thing on the right-hand side. If you remember in the the first session, I go through and I talk about how we're leading the viewer's eyes through the composition. And I think that that's working pretty successfully with the tools and the lines that I've created within this scene. It sort of makes like an S shape with the large black and then the sleeping bag or the cocoon, glowing knitted cocoon on the right-hand side. Um, yeah, this thing was an absolute bear to sit there and paint. Every one of it. So there's two highlights on it. There's the patterning underneath it. And then there's glow effects that have been added to it as well. But worth it. It's getting there. So the fun part about what we're going to do next here is going in and painting this character now. We're going to start with the shadow pass. We always do. And then because this stuff is glowing, we've got the light coming from behind the character. And then we've also got the glow from the sleeping bag that's going to give us good secondary lighting on the character. So we've got our main light source coming from the back, um, you know, and then we've got the glow from the sleeping bag that we can really kind of overemphasize on the character's face and make it almost like they're pretty shiny, and then we're going to lessen that glow on the character's clothing so that it's less refractive. It's not as metallic or shiny. And we're going to start painting how some different materials work with light. All righty. Before we get into the painting part, I want to show you what my layers are looking like in here so we can understand the way that I'm building things up. So within Photoshop, a great trick, now I'm up to, I don't know, 60 something layers within this scene. If you're trying to get to a layer really fast, you can see layer 31 is the underside of the tree. Instead of, scrolling through here, especially when layers start to get like glazes, like you would use within oil paints or washes within acrylics, it can be tricky to find those. So I always hit V on the keyboard to get to my arrow pointer. The superpower of the arrow pointer is that I can right click and that'll give me my layer numbers within the region that I'm looking for. If you've got auto select turned on up in the top left-hand side, unselect that. It is not your friend. It's not your buddy. And that'll help you get down to the layer that you're actually looking for. One of the other tricks that I really love a lot is being able to hold down Control and select left click on the icon of the layer that I'm on, and that's going to region select that layer so that I can paint inside of it. Yes, you can also set your brushes over here down at the bottom to paint inside of it. I didn't find that out until a year ago, and I've been using Photoshop for way too long, since I was in middle school. So that is something you can watch. You can watch a YouTube video on it or look it up online. You can select this weird thing, but then you have to turn it off to paint inside the particular layer. I just like to hold down Control, select the layer. I can actually see what I've got selected and what I'm on. I don't know. Old head ways. Anywho, so that's my tree layer. If I turn that off, there we go. We can see that black is really carrying an awful lot on the tree. There's probably some more room to be able to add some more blues or greens very, very subtly into this tree so that it does not become flat. Anything that, if white is just white, very boring, not interesting. Give that white color a tone like yellow or a cool, a little bit of a coolness to it. If a black is just a flat as dark as you can get black, you're missing an opportunity there to be able to talk to the color space of the rest of the painting in an interesting and meaningful way. That's one of those things that I hope you learn that later on. Black should never just be black. You know, give them a little brown, give them a little red, give them a little purple inside of there, and don't go all the way down. So, anywho, from here, I'm just going to break down the layers for this sleeping bag. So these guys are what I used to be able to paint the sleeping bag. Those orange layers that I've just highlighted here. The first one you saw within that still image, the JPEG that I showed at the beginning when I was showing the progression. That's my block layer, right? So that's the layer that I go in and block this stuff in. I've got my sketch on a very high layer, and then I turn my brush, not on the fuzzy brush, but on the hard round brush. And then from there, I'm just going to outline it, just all the way around underneath my sketch to be able to get the shape. And then I use my magic wand. After I've outlined it, I select inside of that outline that I've just created. And then I go to my drop-down select and go to modify and expand. You want to expand your selection because Photoshop likes to, it's an aliased image, so it's got fuzzy pixels around the edge. This is not vector artwork. So if you don't expand your selection when you're filling things, you'll end up getting a little bit of a gray inner line on the inside of your layers. After that, the next pass is the shadow pass. So I'm going to show you the shadow pass. So you go through, you block in the shape for this thing, hold down Control, select the icon, and then I'm going to start painting in the shadows. When I'm painting in the shadows, I am not using the fuzzy brush yet. I'm still using the hard brush when I'm doing this. And at first, I want to commit to like 100% on the shadow. Just go in for it, and then from there, I'm going to go through and do a second pass and turn the opacity down to like 30%, and then start building up. So you can see that some of my, yeah, there we go, brushwork and layer overlapping, the glazing is still in there. That would be something that I would go for and look at when I'm going through my polish pass at the very end to be able to clean up if I'm doing this for a client. All right, so after this shadow pass, I ended up going through and drawing all these lines. This took absolutely forever. Every one of these stages took absolutely forever on this thing. And whenever you're painting in a pattern like this, you always mess something up, you know, unless you're, there's people out there that can do it. I can't. And you always feel like you could have painted it better, right? So some of this stuff becomes a little bit messy. And that's where, you know, the parts make up the whole. I know that I've got a lot of steps ahead of me for this glowing sleeping bag, and that whenever you do one of these paintings, right? I looked at this thing on Tuesday evening, and I was like, man, that painting is looking great. And you become really focused on the part that you're on. That microscopic focus can really slow you down in important ways. Be sure to continue to work the entire painting. Don't get stuck on one detail forever. The painting is going to talk to you as well, and your brain is going to be learning and solving puzzles along the way. So be reasonable and be realistic about how much time you're committing to any one thing that it is that you want to render. I know that you're learning new things. You might not have rendered stuff like this before. I'll warn you if something is like really, really difficult to be able to render. For example, castles within the midground. You see them 1,000 times. They seem easy enough. Everyone knows what a castle looks like. But when you actually go to paint one of those castles, if you do not have tons of reference images and a really clear one to help guide you and hold your hand along the way, you're going to mess it up. Castles are much more difficult than you think they're going to be. Same thing goes with waves in water, and any kind of transparent wave with the light going through it. Man, you can spend a long time trying to get that one right. Sea foam as well. All right, anywho, I've got a list. So here we go. Next stage for me was to go in and paint those little red highlights inside of there. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm losing some of the shape and form from my shadow layer, so I want to try to bring that back in. So I started painting some darker shadows in here. And then this is where I added in all that darn yellow. Took forever. I was thinking to myself, like, man, well, this is all pretty even right now. I still want to try to pull the viewer's eye up a little bit higher. I'm already at a maximum yellow. How can I make, give a little bit of interest up here at the top to where it actually keeps them up in this space? And so I was thinking to myself, like, okay, here's another glow layer. What if, as this character is knitting this, that it's a little bit brighter right up in the fresh, newly knitted section, and the stuff down at the bottom is a little bit darker or starting to glow less. But I was like, nope, forget it. I want this entire sleeping bag glowing, and we're not going to create a gradient going through it. That's going to look weird. I'm already asking the audience to accept a lot here within this painting, and I think that's just going to confuse folks. So yeah, it's going to stay like this. There's some other areas that I'd still like to go back and refine when I look at it, but within Photoshop, having your navigator open here on the lower left-hand side really does a lot to help you figure out, is this composition working at a small scale? And this is this painting is getting right on the line when it comes to creating too much visual noise. Like, this is really visually noisy inside of here. Um, I don't know. Let's try something. So without that, still works. That's adding a little bit more contrast to it. Yeah, I think it needs the deeper parts as well. Maybe not at this point. No, we're gonna leave it. Leave it. It needs it for those deep little ridges. Plus, I worked hard on that pattern. I'm not losing it. Okay. At this stage, I think we're at a good spot to begin painting this character. Oh yeah, go back to that guy real quick. So this was where I wanted the focus to be, and I'm using all my lines within my shot to be able to pull the viewer's attention right into this section of it. So let me go ahead and turn my sketch on for the foreground. I've got it set to green right now, and that sketch is at 100%. I can turn it down. It's like 43%, so I can easily paint under it. So even though this character is right around this super glowy thing, the glows and the secondary light source is always going to get painted in afterwards. It helps to do your main light source first. So let's go in here, and I've got my middle base layer on this character. I wanted to be able to pull one of the blues from the background. And so he's in the foreground. Other things that are as dark as him is going to be this tree. So we really can use this deep black here if I wanted to. I think I've got a little bit of a dark blue. Let's check it. Yeah, pretty dark blue, pretty fairly saturated here within my scene. And I think that's going to work well for the shadow path. Second. You remember this sketch or this painting started from just the character's head, and I had to freehand the body. So within this shot, we can tell we've already learned a lot from this tree on the left-hand side that the shadow is becoming the most dark around 100%, right around the back of the character. So what I'm going through here and doing is thinking about where the light really is not going to hit on this guy. So we've got our glowy section, which is going to come up through here. I always like to paint the and secondary light that's going to come up on the rib cage. I'm gonna turn down my opacity. I think that's sort of completes. Let's do this part. The darkest areas on this thing. This is going to look cool. I can already tell. So I've moved my brush down to 33%. This is going to allow me to be able to work up into the space. So now I'm comfortable to where I can really start sort of exploring and establishing my forms and shapes here. Again, I'm going to ignore that glow. I do know that I've got some secondary lighting that's going to happen later on here within the shot. But for right now, I want to ignore it and just paint from the backlight. So it seems easy enough. I want to talk to you guys about rendering forms, right? So we've got this chest section here, which is much closer to the light and likely, and we've got a little bit of a divot. So that is going to become darker where the divot's at. The light isn't going to penetrate there. And then things are going to become, we're going to create a gradient on that plane on the character's chest. So if you've ever rendered a cube or a sphere before, it's the exact same stuff. Nothing really changes here. All right, so now I'm starting to go back over this rather quickly. We can have a little bit of light that's starting to go in here. We've got the clavicles that are going to be sticking up, and then there's always a little nape right at the end of the neck. I'm going to turn this brush back up. I'm feeling more confident about darkening up some of these things over here. You've got that section where the shoulder muscle is at, and in between the clavicle that sort of drops down. Let's go back down to like 50% now. And now we've got his arm. We're going to have some cool rim lighting that's going to happen on his shoulders, or on his bicep and his upper shoulder. Got some cool secondary lighting that's going to happen on the forearm right here as it gets closer to the glowing what you call it, the glowing cocoon. Man, I love art that you get to say stuff like that. All right, there we go. So I'm creating these pools of shadow and shading. As we get away from the glowing section, things are going to become darker up around the character's armpit. And we know that they're going to get lighter as we move it down. We've got some secondary shadows that are going to go on. We've got a little bit of a divot here. So from that crease, things are going to start to get brighter as we're moving forward. And that's all feeling pretty good. I'm going to go through and do the rest of the character's head. The big sock up at the top. I've got his rib cage really extended here. So right before we get to that plateau, let's have that divot have a little bit more shading to it. There we go. It's all feeling pretty good. You notice I really don't like to use the smudge tool very much on these first passes, but in this case, some little cleanup is going to help us an awful lot. So with the smudge tool, I like to leave some, this is going to sound weird and hokey, but I like to leave some of the brushwork in there, leave it sharp. Some other areas that are more rounded shapes, like the biceps here, are going to become a little bit softer. So you can very easily over smudge your painting to the point where you've got no real shape or form left in it at all. That's all feeling good to me. A little bit of a line there. There we go. And now we've got the back of the character's head. So with the character's head, it's rounded again. Got the section right behind the ear that's still in there, even if the face is covered. Got the edge of the forehead. This is going to be hanging over, but it's a bulbous shape. The darkest part is going to be in the middle. You can use the round chip brush. The line art legendary brush is a really good one as well. That's going to have on the cheekbones. Going to have some shading to it, and then we want this character to be a little gaunt. So underneath those cheekbones, you can get a little bit more bright. All right, let's use the smudge tool just a little bit here on the back of the character's neck and around where we want it to be more rounded. This thing again, nice and round. We can probably add some, what you call it, wrinkles to it. I think that's a good idea to make it feel more cloth-like. All right, let's deselect this and see how things are looking. Hope I haven't messed it up too bad. And I'm going to turn off my, what you call it, my sketch layer. All right, sketch layer is turned off. And that is the first shadow pass here on the character's body. That was all one color that I did. You can, if you want to start infusing more colors into your shadow pass, I would recommend doing that on a second pass. It's, this is a tonal study really with one color that we're doing in the first stage, but that has taken us a massive step forward. So from our flat color into this, now we can really start to see the shape of the character's body coming together in a much, much bigger way. And we can see exactly where we're going to be laying in those shadows and those highlights. And as we do that, this guy is just going to look better and better. Within my original sketch, got these cool lines that are going through it that I think are really, really nice. Um, I might try and give an homage in some kind of way to that. We'll see. All right. Now since we are working our way through, I know that was really quick. What I did was I selected the layer, this little fuzzy top on the character, held down Control, selected the layer, and then I went down and I created a new layer, so that became layer 46. I already established what my shadow pass is going to be on reds within this shot. Got some other reds in here as well as things move a little bit further away. I kind of like that one. And so now my brush is still at 51%. Always make sure that you turn your smoothing on. 25% works well. If you go up to 50% on the smoothing, you're going to have a lot of trouble. So I'm going to turn this up to 100. I always want to commit there just from the beginning. I know that the light isn't really going to be able to hit too much of this guy, but it's feathery. So we're going to have some light that's passing through. So I need to create some crevices here for that the light can't quite get into. There we go. There we go. And then we're going to have some feathery highlights. This is like, I guess this is sort of a hair demo. That is what I'm doing here. It is a fur texture that we're painting very quickly. I know that I've got my highlights that are going to come from the ground and around the edge of this thing. But you can see that is a pretty big jump from that base color red that we had a second ago. And now as we start to zoom back, that's looking really good. That is looking good and feathery. Here it was without it. Nice. Now it's starting to match the lighting within the scene. Probably need to go a little bit darker within that red, but I'm feeling pretty good about it for right now. So I think since we are so close within the foreground, I'm going to try to use my burn tool on this before I go through and do a second pass. So the burn tool within Photoshop is going to turn the opacity. It's going to bring whatever color you're working with closer to black. Burning it, charring it, it's turning it to charcoal. I'm going to use the next layer. Probably losing some of the tonage that I had in there, but have those little parts feel a little bit more rounded. It was feeling a little bit flat to me. There we go. Let's grab this one more time, and I'm going to create just a new layer with the blue-black on here. And I'm going to use my smudge tool. I'm just pulling some of the lines down. There we go. Let's check it. Yeah, so that feels more connected than what I had before. And now that's sort of informing me, it's reminding me, hey, I can go darker with this thing because we are right up next to the foreground. So let's push, I'm using that burn tool again, some of those shadows that I created before, where I really don't want the light to get to. I'm going to drop this down to 30%. There we go. Now it's starting to cook. Yeah. All right. Like that. Got a lot of glow that's going to happen within the character's belly. But one of the cool things that I had in that sketch was these lines. There we go. Get a little bit darker right around the nape here, or where the top of the hat is. I think that's a cool effect. We really don't want any light hitting up here. Softer. A little darker color right underneath the hat where it matches. Then we can bring some of those dark lines forward. Be able to get that knitted look that we had going on within the original sketch. I said I wanted to try and get some of that detail in here, so I'm not going to forget about it. And now is a good time to start very lightly doing those lines. Man. Just a little bit. Okay. Nice. So that is creating a higher level of contrast between the top of this scene. It's also causing me to see this nasty little section of green here right behind the character's head that needs to be polished now or something to go on with it because that's not gonna fly. If I don't, I think if I don't do that now, I'll regret it. Just trying to make the shape of this make a little bit more sense. Right now, it's wonky. And it can still be lighter. Use the fuzzy brush. Very rarely, oops, too much. Do you see me use the fuzzy brush? Usually that is for for polishing right at the very end. Yes, taking that back was a good idea. Let's go in and just going to create a new layer just in case I don't like it. Turn down just a little bit. There we go. So I think we found a good medium there where some of that pink is still getting pulled over but it's less distracting. It also might be because I don't have the face rendered yet. So let's go in and let's get started on the character's face. We've done the fuzzy top. We've done the character's body, and now the same process for the character's face. And that's right. Every single time here, we're going through and doing the shadow pass first. So I've got my layer selected for where the skin is showing. I'm going to create a new layer on top of that. Let's go ahead and make sure that we save. And I've learned a lot already about this rendering. So this is the only part of this character or of this scene that is using that bright of a white right now. So this is really, really drawing the audience's attention towards it. And we've got a pink light, blue shadow can come off of there. We'll try blue at first. We might end up shifting the color here in a second. But this is skin, and people always say, oh, skin is, translucent, and it's got, light subsurface scattering and light penetrates through the skin below it. Yeah, yada, yada, yada. All that stuff is good to know about, but you still need to be able to paint the form. So what's going on here? Within this character's forehead, we've got essentially a flat plane within this section. That means it's going to be a gradient. So we know we want the rim light right in here, where that's going to start to hit. Oops. Layer. So let's go in and let's turn that brush down to 55%. That's going to be my dark spot. And then we're going to push it forward. All right. Other really deep areas on this character, I'm going back up to 83%, right around where the eyeball shows up. I'm using a weighted brush here. We've got this section right behind the eyeball where not a whole lot of light is going to get to. There's still a little bit of a gradient. We want to make sure that we get the nape of the eye where it's closing back here. Some of those little ridges need to be extra dark. Not too much light is going to get to the nose in this section or this back part of the nose really at all. We're going to start to get a little a secondary light that's going on the edge of the cheek here, right in this part, but we're not going to do that quite yet. That's going to come later on. We've got the lips. That line's going to get thicker and darker as we move further away. Got a little bit of an edge light. Oops, sorry. That's going to happen right here on the bottom of the lip that we're going to end up doing. We've got this fold, so it's going to become really dark right here. And that fold is going to taper away. We've got this section that is going to get a little bit dark. We've still got some underlighting that's going to happen on the character's nose. But this is, all right, if we did like the topology map of it, goes out and it's sort of shaped like that. So this might be a second pass when we turn the volume down. All right, so let's go in, let's turn it back down to 45%. I like that first one just to make sure I'm not messing anything up. I'm going to create a new layer. I don't want it to be too bug-eyed. Again, we said we're going to have a little bit of a highlight going on in the character's cheek. Gone in a little bit too close here. Sometimes it's helpful. All right. And so now we can really see those lines that I was creating a second ago. Or sorry, the Photoshop lines are starting to create a bit of an issue. So I'm going to use my smudge tool. Work my way through it. So this is all with the hard-edged brush right now. Fuzzy here around the character's chin. I don't want it to be too soft. And let's go back in. We've got the edge of the character's nose to do now. Holding down my brush and not lifting it up and just blocking in these particular forms and shapes. Starting to look like Mirror, Mirror on the Wall from Snow White a little bit. I like that. Yep. Don't really want that secondary lighting going out of here, and that's all feeling good. We're in a good spot for our smudge tool. Pull that over. There's probably some more work that I need to do here. We're starting to lose the eyeballs just a little bit, and we're going to darken some of these sections up a little bit more. But we're going to do that with the fuzzy brush. It's a polish pass. Let's hit Control E on our keyboard to be able to merge down. Again, being very, very controlled with the smudge brush. Do not want to overdo it. I don't want to lose all my line work or all the shading that I've created here. Now let's go in with that fuzzy brush. Haven't changed my purple, haven't lowered it at all. And we've got another gradient that I'm creating here. Haven't done any of the secondary lighting on this character yet. The chin's at, we want that to fade forward, moving down. All right, let's have a look at what we got and what we need to clean up. Move it up, turn off the sketch. All right, I think that's workable for a first pass here on that character. We've still got the hands to go through and do. So I like the color. Let's try some other options here. So this is the great part about working digitally. When you're working on traditional media, you are stuck with that particular color. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation under the drop down. So Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation. And this one is quickly going to allow me to be able to shift that color around. But while I'm shifting it, let's zoom out. Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation. There we go. So that blue is working. It's working okay. It's matching with the background pretty well. Now we're starting to get into a little bit more red. I kind of like the purple tone. I think that's jumping pretty well with the background. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to go to Image Adjustments Levels. I love the levels where you can go in and you can start to darken some of this stuff up a lot. That's too much. Want to leave some room, or you can brighten it up as well. But you've got the mid-tones that you can control here also, which is really nice. Let's leave those alone for right now. And let's do let's finish up the hands. There's my pure color for this. It's my darkest color. And we just learned, is the face perfect right now? No. But just like we did with the character's body a second ago, that first pass, give yourself some grace. We've learned an awful lot about the character from doing that study. And now we've got a conversation with this painting that we can move forward with. So we got the hands here. I'm still on the fuzzy brush, hard round at first, 47%. That works for me. And I'm trying to establish, where got some real brightness that's going to happen here around the fingers, but we've got a glow that's happening all around the character as well. The hands, I've got tight little details within them. So here's the thumb that's wrapping around at the top. This isn't really going to catch much detail right there. Learning a lot. And this is going to have a little bit of shadow to it before the pink starts to pick up. Let's use the smudge tool again. Just that quick. Notice I'm not painting every single finger in detail because I know I've got my shadows or my highlights that are going to come in and inform a lot on this character as well. Let's leave this here for now. Like this sort of ghostly glowing glowworm type shading that I'm doing on this character. Feels pretty good to me. Let's turn it off, turn my sketch off, and zoom back real quick. And look at that. We've got a much better impression of how those hands are going to work than what we had just a moment ago. Let's go in and let's start doing the highlight pass. The highlight pass, I'm going to start from the beginning again with, I'm calling the glowing sleeping bag thing secondary lighting. So I want to at first select, I'm going to start this whole process over again on this character. And I'm going to start on his body. So we've got my shadow pass here. I'm going to do one layer on top of the shadow pass. And then I've got some highlights from the background that I'm going to include within here. So we've got these trees that have got this pink lighting going on around them. We've seen that we can change the color of the brush of what we're painting with fairly easily. Let's go in here and let's start creating those highlights around the edge. Got a whole bunch of glow that's going to come up. Wanted to make them a little bit ribbed. Turn down my opacity, 34%. There we go. That secondary lighting, well, it's a little bit, it's pretty pink also. Let's go ahead and start painting it. We'll see how this goes. All right, so we got the glow coming up on the character's forearm here. That's important. His elbow, that's going to catch a little bit of it right here. Then I want that glow to dissipate as we move up the character's arm. I still want some of it here on his shoulder, on the tricep as it moves down. Turn this down even more, 18%. So we're getting in and over some of those shadows that we just had a second ago. Cool. Working well for me. And then we've got the glow. Be sitting with him right here. What did we say? We want the rib cage to catch some of that secondary shadow. If one of his ribs will make him really interesting character. Let's make this a little bit rounded over here. It's not entirely flat. That's the hip. Got a bony hip sticking out and a little bit of a recess. We said we want the underside of the rib cage here to catch some of that light. And then we're going to have some of the light come in here and dissipate as it moves across the character. Same thing for this. We've got that light color coming across and then dissipating. Here, a lot of light. Going to be hitting this. Top of his forearm. It's a sharp, squarish kind of object. And then we've got seeing a little bit more roundness here at the bottom, but I still want to cut through that shadow in a really big way. And then we've got the glow coming off of the, what you call it, the blankie as well. There it is. From here henceforward, it will be called the blankie. There it is. So now that lighting is working pretty good. We're letting it drop back, not quite reaching very back of the character. That makes me want to put some of it going all the way across the front of him here, just a little bit. Same thing goes for this. Top of that from the light from the background. They really need to be two different lights, but figure that out here in a minute. Maybe just a little bit of that is catching. Yeah, this is catching a lot more of the light. Feeling good. Underside of the neck, going to be catching some of the highlights. There we go. Feeling pretty good. Using the smudge tool right now, just to be able to go in and push and pull and prod some of those just a little bit more. They can make a little bit more sense. Being rid of some of my paint marks, some areas. Go. And softening this, since it's a round shape, the edge of the body. Pulling back some of these other ones. There we are. So that's starting to feel pretty good on rendering this character. We've got the top of the character's head now. The round shape, so we're really rendering a sphere. My smudge tool just to be able to collapse it down. Don't need to have the rim light absolutely everywhere. And now we've got the upper side. Softening it with the smudge tool, but not too much, just being very, very cautious with the way that I use this. To use the soft brush just a little bit. I'm at 18% still. And I'm just using it to create a glaze. Smudge tool. Wanted some of those just so that we're getting a little bit more of that texture there. All right, let's pull back. Let's check it out. And let's look a little bit further back. Neat. All right, so now we can really see that character's elbow starting to show up. I think that overall the color scheme is working pretty well here. If I turn off that highlight, you can see how much that's adding. So we've gone within 2 passes from a flat color and a sketch with the shadow pass into the highlights. And now I'm going to do the same thing. For time's sake, I'll do the little fuzzy hair section later on. Let's go in and do a second pass on the character's face. So previously on the character's face, we had done our first initial pass. Now, this is good. We've learned a lot from it, but likely there's some things that we can darken up even more since we are right up in the foreground of our character. I'm going to take my burn tool. It's all feeling pretty good. Got the same pink turned on there, but let's imagine that the face is interpreting the light differently. Let's grab our bright pink. New layer up. And we're going to do the same thing. So let's go in here. We were at 18% before. Let's start up at 64%. Hard brush. See what this gives us. So this is a plane. So again, we're going to have a gradient that's going across the character's forehead. We've got the upper lip that's going to be catching some of the light. This part of the character over here is going to be catching a lot more of the light. Bottom of the lip. I said we want the turn it down 35%. Underneath the eye. See how that's feeling. And then under the bridge, the character's eye as well. Bridge of the nose. It's flat. Tip of the nose. There we go. Okay, I think that's feeling good to me for where those highlights should be. Now I'm going to use my smudge tool very, very loosely just to be able to soften up some of it. Push and pull those shapes. Oops. We're going to do some discoloration on the upper lip as well. I think it needs it. Oh boy. Yeah, this face is starting to look cool now. So discoloration on the upper lip. Let's go with the blue underneath the highlight layer. Now I'm in a pretty good spot to work on, well, no, let's stay the path. Let's do the hands next. Figure those out. 35%, let's bring it up to 55%. So one of the cool things I know that I can do is I can use something called the dodge tool. And the dodge tool is going to let me bring any of these colors that I'm painting up to white. So just like the burn tool brings you closer to the blacks, the dodge tool is going to bring you closer to the whites. Find more dark layers that I need to do with the hands and a little bit of refinement to work on with those later on. But just trying to work fast and quick and get some ideas across. So let's go in. I'm going to use the fuzzy brush real quick on these hands, soft and round, 30%. Soften that up. There we go. Smudge tool. Yeah, needs a darker pass, just like we did with the lips on the character's face, for these fingers to really refine them and bring them in. But each one of these steps here is going to bring us much, much closer how this final piece should look. So I think we've done a good job of creating the subsurface scattering on the character's face here. I think it can be a little bit darker. There's some parts in it that I'm not that crazy about. So one of the sections that I don't like, I'm always thinking now, how would the shadow actually dissipate? And this part right up under his eye, I don't like too much. And for some quick fixes now that we've come this far, I'm just going to darken his whole eyeball up a lot. This is on my flat middle color layer that I created before, the very first layer. Darkening some of that. Oops. All that was. It's painting pink. God, I hope not. Yeah, I was painting pink that entire time. Oh my gosh, that's silly. Okay. Let's try darkening like I wanted to. There we go. Got my fuzzy brush still turned on. Correct some of those spots that I just painted pink. There we go. That's better. All right. So we've gotten a lot done on this character for now. I think we're losing quite a bit of its face with the way that the lighting is working right now. So that tells me I can probably, let's mess with the levels. There we go. Lighten some of those shapes, some of those shadows just a little bit. Let's bring it back a little bit, or we need to push some of those highlights. Let's cancel it, and we can see how dark that's getting. That doesn't look right. Yeah, need to bring it up. Levels. That looks more accurate. And so the face is there. It's still starting to disappear, and we're just, when I zoom way back, I'm just seeing the highlights that are on it right now. So I think there's a little bit more work that I can do with that. But for working from your base layer into your shadow layer and into your highlight layer, I think that this is a pretty good first step. There's still push and pull and refinement that needs to happen with it, but that will get you 85 to 95% of the way there in most design cases. So I hope this was useful for you guys. I'm gonna stop the video for this session. And yeah, can't wait to see what you end up creating.